What if I told you that everything you've been told about metabolic flexibility was wrong? What if the ideas that we have been discussing for a while in the keto carnivore space about what metabolic flexibility is and how we can optimize it aren't actually physiologically accurate? There's a realization that I came to in the last couple of weeks as I've been doing research, studying and preparing papers, writing papers, um, about metabolic flexibility that has kind of turned my world upside down, and I want to talk about it with you today. Before we do that, I'm Coach Bronson. I've been coaching for almost 15 years in people in health, fitness, nutrition, quality of life improvement. I focus primarily right now working with Gen X athletes, trying to extend their competitive careers, keep them active, and in some cases, recover from the damage that they may have done in their competitive careers when they were younger. Um, we like to overtrain. We like to do things. We like to show them young whippersnappers what's what. And in many cases, we don't want to let go of certain things. Some of us get addicted to training, and it's actually done more harm than good over the years. And using ketogenic nutrition, using appropriate training methodologies for where you're at, where you're trying to go, and what you're trying to do, we can bring that back. I'm very successful in getting athletes in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who felt like they've lost it all, get it back. And that's what this is all about. When we talk about metabolic flexibility, the conversation is usually targeted on the idea of cycling macronutrients to optimize how our body switches back and forth between fuel types based on what it needs and based on what's available. So metabolic flexibility is the traditional definition is the body's ability to switch between substrates when it's needed. Okay. And by substrates, we're basically saying carbs and fats. So how well our body manages that switching process is what we call metabolic flexibility. Now, there's one aspect of metabolic flexibility that people get commonly confused with, and that is thinking that we need to eat carbs in order to enhance metabolic flexibility. Because if you spend too much time following a ketogenic diet, then you're going to lose the ability to utilize carbs. Number one, that's wrong, because the ability to utilize carbs, we'll talk about this, is part of the definition of being fat adapted. We could not become fat adapted if we ever stopped being able to utilize carbs. It doesn't work that way. Okay. So there is no need in this context to cycle in carbs to maintain metabolic flexibility. That is different than, and you've heard me talk about this before, the digestive ability and the adaptation of the gut's ability to digest carbs. If you don't eat a lot of plants, your body's going to downregulate the things it needs to digest plants, and it won't be as prepared the next time you eat plants. That's different. That's also not metabolic flexibility. Metabolic flexibility is an internal combination of processes that allows your body to access and utilize energy substrates to provide energy. It is an energy concept. Okay. So when we're talking about that, keep that in mind. We're talking about what's happening inside the body, not just the gut, not digesting, because digesting doesn't provide energy. Digesting provides the breakdown of food into the substrates, specifically carbs and fats, that then gets distributed around to your body to be used as energy in metabolically active tissues and processes. Okay. So digestion is part of the step to break it down so you can then engage processes that support metabolic flexibility. Digestion is not metabolic flexibility. Okay. That being said, let's understand a couple of things. There is an impact when you eat carbs on metabolic flexibility. It is negative. So when we're looking at what metabolic flexibility actually is, as an internal concept, a bunch of systems inside our bodies that produce, access, and utilize substrates to make energy. That's important to understand because this is where we're missing. This is the key to the thing that blew my mind up a couple weeks ago and has me been digging in holes trying to frame this concept in a way to explain it to you guys because I think it's really, really important to understand this. Metabolic flexibility. There are 7 processes involved in metabolic flexibility. None of them, and we'll talk about the nuance here as we go, but none of them actually require external sources of energy, external substrates, food, right? We do need food, and we'll talk about how that plays into this conversation. But for metabolic flexibility to work, it's not about what you eat. It's about what your body has internally that it can produce, access, and utilize. Okay. So when we talk about access, we're talking about lipolysis, breaking down body fat, and we're talking about glycogenolysis, breaking down stored glycogen. Okay. The ability to break down body fat, the ability to access stored glycogen. That's the first couple things to talk about. Those systems, if they are efficient, you will always have access to the energy that you need without eating. Key. You will always have access to the energy that you need if your body is efficient at lipolysis and glycogenolysis. Okay. Additionally, the utilization of the fatty acids that we get from, the triglycerides that we get from lipolysis and the utilization of the glycogen broken down to glucose that we get from glycogenolysis is accessed and utilized through glycolysis and beta oxidation, fatty acid oxidation. Okay. When we do that, we now are utilizing, those are the 2 primary pathways that our body utilizes glucose and fat to make energy, ATP. Glycolysis, aerobic, beta oxidation, fatty acid oxidation, aerobic. Okay, so now what am I saying so far? Let's step this through. Your body has fat stored. Your body has glycogen stored. There's 2 processes that are internal that your body can use to break those down. Okay. When it does that, you can now use glycolysis and fatty acid oxidation to utilize that for energy. Boom, all the energy you need. Plus, and this is something that we can only get from inside, okay, without anything external. When we break down triglycerides to get the fatty acids so that we can use beta oxidation, we also get glycerol that goes into gluconeogenesis, which is a production system that supports metabolic flexibility. Okay, so now we're breaking down body fat. Body fat is the only substance that we have that provides both aerobic and anaerobic materials, fat and glucose, to our bodies for energy. It comes from body fat. Okay, anybody that tells you we can't break down body fat and turn it into glucose doesn't know what they're talking about. Because by definition, we can. Triglycerides stored in adipose tissue go to fatty acid oxidation, they go to gluconeogenesis, and then they go into glycolysis, pyruvate oxidation technically. Okay, so it is possible, and that's where most of it comes from when we are ketogenic. That process, breaking down body fat and using the glycerol to produce glucose, is what enables us to be fat adapted. That internal metabolic flexibility of production, access, and utilization enables ketogenic lifestyle. We also get ketones. We all know that. Oxidizing fatty acids, we get ketones as a byproduct. That gets pushed back through the system, right? We use ketolysis in the brain mostly. Ketones provide more energy for the brain than anywhere else. And you may have heard other videos I've talked about that, where ketones can provide energy to muscle initially, but over time, the more adapted you are, that goes down. It's lower than 5%, I believe, if I remember correctly. Ketones are not a primary driver of muscle contraction or exercise energy, other than providing energy for the brain. Okay. But think about everything that I just said. Lipolysis is an internal system. Glycogenolysis is an internal process. Ketogenesis, gluconeogenesis, glycolysis, ketolysis, beta oxidation, fatty acid oxidation. All of those things are internal, and they can all be supported from body fat and stored glycogen. Why am I talking about this? Why does this even matter? Here's the deal, guys. I was thinking about carbs not supporting metabolic flexibility, because when we eat carbs, and this is evident in anybody who's transitioning, anybody who's fasted, anybody who's done a lot of carbs and they feel like crap when they work out without eating. This is a great example. If you have to eat your carbs before you go work out to exercise, or your exercise or your workout sucks, it's because you are not metabolically flexible. You are dependent on an external source of energy to get through your workout. That is the definition of inflexible metabolic function. You have to take in something in order to get energy, not flexible. Okay? Thinking about that process and how a lot of people think that the reason they need carbs before they work out is because their glycogen stores are low. It has nothing to do with low glycogen stores. It has everything to do with being inflexible in their metabolism. Their body can't access the stored glycogen. Their efficiency of glycogenolysis is inhibited or down-regulated because it doesn't need to work, because they're cramming carbs in their face all the time. Okay. If I'm eating carbs, my body doesn't need to access the glucose or the glycogen that's in my muscles. I'm putting all of it in my face. Okay. And that got me thinking. Here's the connection point. That is determined by oxidative priority. If you don't know what oxidative priority is, it is the way that our bodies process macronutrients based on where they come from, how much we have to store them, and toxicity. If you look at the oxidative priority list in the order in which different macronutrients take priority, alcohol's at the top, first thing. Okay. Then we have ketones, fat, and carbs. Think about that for a second. That's what got me thinking about what I'm about to say. If carbs interrupt metabolic flexibility as an internal system and make you inflexible when you eat it, so does fat and ketones and alcohol. How can alcohol be something that messes up metabolic function and carbs be something that mess up metabolic function in oxidative priority, and fat and ketones are on that list as well, but they don't, right? It got me thinking. It might have you thinking, like, what are you talking about? This doesn't make any sense. I've always heard that some of you may have heard, right? Eating more fat gets you fat adapted, it increases your metabolic flexibility. And yes, but no. It does, in the fact that it helps your body learn and become more efficient at fat oxidation, which is a part of metabolic flexibility. But as long as you keep putting it in, every time you put something external in your mouth, it stops the internal, right? So even if you are trying to be fat adapted and you are putting a bunch of fat in your face, what are you not getting with that fat? Because you're putting the fat in, you're turning off lipolysis. Your body says, I don't need to break down body fat because I'm eating a ton of fat, right? Just like when you put a bunch of carbs in your mouth, your body says, I don't need to be good at glycogenolysis because I don't need to access my stored glycogen in my muscles. I'm getting enough through my face. Body says the exact same thing with fat. If I'm eating a ton of fat, lipolysis, whoop, hold on. Don't need to break down the body fat. I got enough coming in. What's missing in that equation? Why is that not supporting metabolic flexibility? Because when we eat fat, we're getting fat. We're not getting triglycerides. We're not getting the triglycerides from our adipose tissue that provides the glycerol to go to gluconeogenesis and create glucose. So not only are we telling our body fat it doesn't need to break down, but we're limiting our body's access and efficiency at utilizing glucose that could be coming from internal sources. This could be a reason why people feel like crap, even though they're eating a ton of fat. Fat as a food does not provide both fatty acids and glycerol. Okay. What does this mean? What does this mean in the big picture? Number one, our idea of metabolic flexibility needs to change. Metabolic flexibility is more than just how our body switches between fuels. Metabolic flexibility is how do the seven systems of bioenergetics function internally in the absence of food. Every time we eat anything, we interrupt our metabolic flexibility, right? That's what my head does every time I say it. I can't believe I'm saying that out loud. Okay, because it's a framing of how things work that I've never really thought of until recently. But it puts some things into place. Right? So what does this mean for you, your training, how you live your life, whatever else? I think for anything right now, I have not put all the pieces together and thought about what all the impacts downstream this concept could cause. Okay. I do know that it does change a couple things theoretically. Training and nutrient timing changes from the concept and the whole thought process of fueling a workout or fueling an activity to now training nutrition methods can switch or should potentially switch from I need to fuel this exercise to I need to recover my fuel stores from an exercise to get ready for the next exercise. We can now look at nutrition as a recovery mechanism. We can stop trying to fuel up before. We can stop trying to fuel up during, because all we're doing, if we're eating before a workout or we're eating during a workout, all we're doing is interrupting our body's internal efficiency. It's a whole new way to think, guys. Okay. And then I can do my training, fasted training. The idea behind fasted training may change. Maybe it's not in that workout. Maybe fasted training can be a detriment to exercise now because the way we approach fitness is fueling all the time and fueling for exercise, and our bodies aren't adapted to that, which could be why we see people who like to do fasted training and have been doing it for a while don't seem to have a problem because they are more metabolically flexible. They eat after they work out. They fuel their body for the next exercise. And that works perfectly fine for them. And they don't have a problem gaining muscle. But when we see the studies that are being done on fasted athletes, they're going from habitually eating before exercise and during exercise to now all of a sudden we're going to stop. Now you're fasting for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, or all of a sudden you're just going to fast for a couple of days and we're going to see how your body reacts. And it sucks because they haven't actually adapted to the difference and the shift in how their body 7 processes, not just are they in ketosis, but is their body actually able to break down stored muscle glycogen to do glycolytic work? Is their body actually able to access the body fat to provide fatty acids and glycerol for more glucose to keep blood sugar regulated? It changes a whole bunch of things if we look at it this way. So this is just, I don't know, let's call this a save the date, a heads up, a warning, a FYI for your information, because as I do more thinking with this and try to run this down, talk to some colleagues, get some other people in the conversation, I really think I've talked to a couple of people already who are smarter than me in this space and have gotten confirmation and affirmation that, hey, I think I might be onto something here. But it's just the way that we think about metabolic flexibility and how our body works. If you are, and this is the practical piece of this, I try to be as applied as possible. Bottom line, what this whole conversation, 22 minutes of conversation really means. If you have to eat something or fuel for your exercise, that is the easiest way to know that you are not metabolically flexible. Metabolic function does not require pre-fueling. You have everything you need. Okay. There is no issue with running out of glycogen in your workouts. You have plenty of body fat on your body. Okay. Even if you were 10% body fat, you have plenty of body fat on your body to fuel as whatever workouts you want to do. Okay. And your body will access what it needs. And even if you didn't eat, the body fat that you have will help you replenish all of those stores again anyways, and you could do another workout. I would hazard a guess that most of us, myself included, have enough body fat where we can do several workouts in a week without eating at all and be perfectly fine. Particularly the longer we go and improve our metabolic flexibility. All right. So, key sign that you are not metabolically flexible: if you have to eat before a workout. Okay. You shouldn't have to. We won't talk about electrolytes. We won't talk about overall eating in a day and all that other kind of stuff. I'm not saying go start doing fasted exercise, but I am saying that could potentially be something that is actually beneficial in a different way, not because of the autophagy of the exercise, not because of any of those other mechanisms, but simply the more we can train our body to be better at what it does internally, the better everything else should be. See ya.